How are you guys doing? Today is Sunday, July 25th, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite individual profile on Alvin Kamara. The elite running back for the New Orleans Saints turns 26 today, and my intent with this episode is to provide viewers with the context along with the accolades, achievements, and what he's been able to just accomplish from the moment he stepped into the spotlight before he made it to the University of Tennessee to where he is now one of few running backs to be able to do what he's been able to do, entering the second half of his 20s, showing the rest of the world why he deserves the fame and the hype that he currently gets. If you're unfamiliar with Alvin Kamara, he is an all-purpose back standing at about a 5'10", 215 pounds, incredibly shifty in open field, an amazing blocker, great just runner out of the blocks. He knows how to read linemen, knows how to read defenses, and he's able to do so offensively, of course, having one of the best quarterbacks of all time, being his quarterback at least up until now. But of course, this has definitely helped shape Alvin Kamara into one of the best running backs, considering he was a third-round pick that many people didn't really take a chance on. So just going back into his background, he's originally from Norcross, Georgia. That's not far from Atlanta. And he would establish himself as one of the best young prospects in the state of Georgia before he would eventually go and play at Alabama. As a true freshman, he would actually get redshirted, and he would complete it after he had knee surgery during the preseason. He would be on the same team as Derrick Henry, TJ Yeldon, and Kenyon Drake, who are all now in the NFL. But after his very first season where he didn't play, he would transfer to Hutchinson Community College in Alabama. And in the 9 games he played, he ran for 1,211 yards, 18 total touchdowns, and he would establish himself as a good enough prospect to transfer into Tennessee. And in his redshirt sophomore season in the 2015 season, he would go on to play 13 games for a Tennessee Volunteers team that would end up officially going 9-4 on the season before they won the Outback Bowl as a top 25 team. In that season, Kamara would end up running for 698 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground. He would also add 291 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air. He had a total of 989 yards and 10 touchdowns from scrimmage. At the conclusion of the season, Tennessee would go on to play in the Outback Bowl before they beat Northwestern 45-6. Following his redshirt sophomore season, he would come back to Tennessee in 2016 for his redshirt junior season. That year, he would play 11 games in a season where Tennessee would end up going 9-4. They finished with the same record. Over that regular season, including the bowl game, he would finish with 596 yards on 103 carries and 9 touchdowns on the ground. He had more touchdowns on the ground than his previous season. Not to mention he had 392 yards through the air and 40 receptions along with 4 touchdowns. In 2 less games in the previous season, he finished with 988 yards from scrimmage, which is 1 less yard from scrimmage in 2 less games. He would also finish with 13 total touchdowns from scrimmage, which is 3 more than the previous season. After his 2 seasons at Tennessee, where he actually got playing time, he would end up being taken with the 67th overall pick in the 2017 draft. If you're familiar with the 2017 draft, at least familiar with the position that he played, he would be taken after Christian McCaffrey, who was taken eventually with the number 8 overall pick. Just to give a sense of what was going on there, he was taken after Dalvin Cook, who was taken with the 41st overall pick in the second round, who would eventually end up being a Pro Bowler. And then Alvin Kamara was the 3rd running back taken in this draft, who would eventually get selected into a Pro Bowl. Just to give a sense of just a little bit more context, Leonard Fournette was also taken with the 4th pick, but he hasn't made a Pro Bowl yet, just to give a sense of what was going on in his position around then. But he was selected by the New Orleans Saints, and ever then he's been able to call New Orleans home. Starting in his first season with the Saints, in his rookie season, in his age 22 season in 2017, he would start 3 of the 16 games that he would play in a season where the Saints would finish with an 11-5 record. They would win the NFC South after not making the playoffs the previous 3 seasons with a 7-9 record each and every one of those seasons. During the regular season, Alvin Kamara would go on to be named the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year, a Pro Bowler, and a second-team All-Pro in his first season. On the ground, he'd finished with 728 yards and 8 touchdowns on 120 carries. He led the league in yards per carry on the ground, especially as a running back. And then through the air, he had 81 receptions for 826 yards. More yards through the air than he did on the ground, not to mention he had his 5 touchdowns through the air. So in total yards from scrimmage in his rookie season, he would go on to finish with 1,554 yards on 201 touches with 13 total touchdowns on the season. Like I said, doing really what he could on the offensive end. And while Marshawn Lattimore was named the Defensive Rookie of the Year, Alvin Kamara was named the Offensive Rookie of the Year. Like I just said, after being named a Pro Bowler and a second-team All-Pro in his very rookie season, the Saints would go on to the playoffs where they would beat the Panthers, their divisional rivals in the wild card, and then they would eventually lose to the Vikings by 5 in the divisional round. And of course, 2017 was the year in which the Eagles would end up beating the Patriots in the Super Bowl. But following his rookie season, where he established himself as one of the best all-around weapons in football, he would come back for his second year with the Saints in 2018. And in his second year in the league, he would establish himself as a full-time starter for the Saints. He would start 13 of the 15 games that he would play in 2018 in a season where the Saints would finish with a 13-3 record. They won 2 more games in the previous season, but they would, of course, win the NFC South for the second consecutive year. On the ground, he had 883 yards on 194 carries, which is more than his rookie season. He also had 14 touchdowns on the ground. Through the air, he had 81 receptions for 709 yards, as many receptions as he had his rookie year, but more than 100 yards less. So totally from scrimmage, he finished with 275 touches, 74 more touches than his rookie season. He finished with 1,592 yards, which would end up being 38 more yards than the previous season. He had 18 total touchdowns from scrimmage, and in 2018, of course, he would be named a Pro Bowler for the second time in his career. That's the only accolade he would get. And once they would make it to the playoffs, the Saints would beat the Eagles, the defending champs, in the divisional round before eventually losing in the NFC Championship to the Los Angeles Rams, who ended up losing to the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl that year. Following the 2018 season, Alvin Kamara would come back to New Orleans for his third season in the league in 2019 in his age 24 season. He would start 9 of the 14 games that he would play in a season where the New Orleans Saints would finish with a 13-3 record, the same record as they had the previous year. This was the year that Michael Thomas would end up winning the Offensive Player of the Year. In his third season in the league, Alvin Kamara would end up making the Pro Bowl for his third consecutive season. In this season, on the ground, he finished with 797 yards on 171 yards and 5 touchdowns. That is the least amount of touchdowns he was able to put together the least amount of rushing touchdowns he's ever put together in a season to date. And then through the air, he finished with 533 yards on his third consecutive season with 81 receptions. He had 1 yard through the air, or 1 receiving touchdown through the air, So in his third year in the league, he'd finished with 252 touches for 1,330 yards. Compared to his second year in the league, he had 23 less touches total, and then he would finish with about 262 less yards from scrimmage. And he also had, in his 6 touchdowns, this is the only time in his 4-year career so far that he's been able to finish with less than 10 total touchdowns on the season. And at the conclusion of the season, the Saints would end up losing in the wild card round to the Vikings, the second time in the previous 3 seasons that they had lost to the Vikings in the playoffs. And like I said, Michael Thomas won the Offensive Player of the Year after finishing with the NFL record in receptions that year. But following his third year in the league, Alvin Kamara will come back for year 4 with the Saints, which is his most recent 2020 season, which many NFL fans know was impacted by coronavirus, to the point where they would finish all 16 of their games, but they would play the entirety of the season without fans, I believe, until the playoffs. In his age 25 season in 2020, Alvin Kamara would go on to make the Pro Bowl in his 4th consecutive season in his first 4 seasons in the league. Additionally, he would go on to be named a second-team All-Pro for the second time in his career. In this most recent 2020 season, in his age 25 season, in Drew Brees' final season as the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, Kamara would finish with 932 yards on the ground on 87 carries and 16 touchdowns. This would be his career high in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns to date. Through the air, he finished with 83 receptions, which is a career high, for 756 yards, which is the second most receiving yards he's ever had in a season to his rookie season. And in this most recent season, he'd finished with 270 touches, which is five less than what he had his second year in the league. He finished with 1,688 yards from scrimmage, which for now is a career high for his. And he would go on to lead the NFL in total touchdowns from scrimmage, as he had 21, which of course is a career high and the first time he's ever been able to eclipse the 20 total touchdowns. This is the third time in his first 4 seasons that he's had at least double-digit touchdowns in a season. At the conclusion of the season, like I said, he was named second team All-Pro. And once the Saints made the playoffs, they would end up beating the Bears in the extended wild card round. That was the only playoff game I think that's ever been shown on Nickelodeon. And then they would end up losing in the divisional round to the Buccaneers, to Tom Brady, before the Buccaneers went on to win the Super Bowl. So that currently leads us to where we are now, as Alvin Kamara is entering the second half of his 20s. In his first 4 years in the league, he's made the Pro Bowl, and he's already made the second team All-Pro already 2 times in those 4 years. As you can see from the trajectory that his career is showing that it's going in, Alvin Kamara may go down as one of the best running backs of all time. Definitely may go down as the Saints' best all-time running back, or all-around running back of all time. And the thing about him is that he does get better with time. He does get smarter, and it'll be very interesting to see what he does over the next few years. So first off, I want to thank College Football Reference, Pro Football Reference, the NFL websites for giving me all the facts and figures that I need to do for this episode. I, of course, want to thank everybody for listening to all 12 minutes of this piece. Of course, I hope all is well. And I want to wish Alvin Kamara a happy 26th birthday. If you ever get a chance to watch him, he wears number 41 for the New Orleans Saints. He's also the second player in NFL history to score 6 rushing touchdowns in a single game, to give a sense of just the type of player that Alvin Kamara is. And he's the first running back in NFL history to have at least 500 rushing yards and at least 500 receiving yards in each of his first 4 seasons. So this could show just the type of pace that this player is at. And hopefully by this time next year, I'll have more to talk about, as he will turn 27 by then. But until then, I want to thank everyone for listening to my piece. I hope all is well. Once again, happy birthday to Alvin Kamara, number 26, or his 26th birthday, number 41 for the Saints. I hope all is well, and peace out. I'll catch you with another episode for Alvin Kamara next year.